When one thinks about the lives of killers outside of their criminal acts, it's often hard to visualise them having a normal life. But almost all of them do. They often have families, friends, homes, and hobbies. And jobs. They normally have day jobs in the mundane constructs of normal lives that they create. But when one considers what job a killer may have, it's difficult to know the right type of job for a killer. They can be blue-collar workers, white-collar workers, manual workers, academics, team workers, lone workers. The jobs can be as varied as the killers themselves. But there do tend to be jobs that we do not expect killers to have. One among this selection could be ice cream man. But today's tale sees us look at how an attack on one particular ice cream man turned him from a victim into a perpetrator in the pursuit of revenge. It is a quite divisive case which falls into the grey area of justice, including vigilante justice and indeed what forms justice can take. It's a tale that takes a long time to reach a conclusion and only ended in May of last year. And this was some 13 years after the actions in question actually took place. So join me now as we go to Florida in 2010 for the convoluted and controversial case of Michael Keetley and look at what turned Mr. Whippy into Mr. Flippy. This is Murder of Crows. In Florida in 2010, Michael Keetley was an ice cream man. This purveyor of saccharine treats and chilled confection plied his trade bringing sweetness and happiness into the lives of children and adults alike. But before we jump into the events that befell him and that he in turn perpetrated, I will say that this case is less about background and more about the events of 2010 alone. Similarly, it is a case of two opposing sides in a court case 13 years in the making, and the polarising views that the case represented when it did eventually come to court, not once, but twice. And I would really appreciate your views on this case, as it very much comes down to who you believe, and how you believe justice should or should not be meted out. Now let's go back to our scoop meister, Michael Keetley. On January the 23rd, 2010, Michael Keetley was doing his ice cream round as usual. Though who wants ice cream in the dead of winter, I don't know. Well, I do really. I can't deny it. But that day his life was turned upside down. Two men in masks jumped into his truck, attacking Keetley in an armed robbery. Keetley was severely beaten, was shot 6 times, and left for dead while the attackers made off with his takings. $12 whole. Keetley was shot in both arms, in his back, and the fact that he survived at all was remarkable. But Keetley's injuries were life-changing and placed him on a path of recovery and rehabilitation that would last many months. And even then, there would be no guarantees that he would be as physically able and capable as he had been prior to the vicious attack. As Keetley embarked on what would be a long road of rehabilitation for his broken and permanently altered body, which required metal rods and physical therapy to get back to any sort of normality, he was relying on the police to track down and punish the men that had ruined his life for just $12. But as time continued to move on with little to no progress in his case, he began to lose heart. But with this loss of hope came an increase in his anger and bitterness that the people that so wantonly injured him and left him for dead were getting away with what they did to him. And that anger and bitterness just incubated and festered within him until it began to bubble to the surface. If the police couldn't or wouldn't find the attackers, then maybe it was up to him. As his recovery progressed, Keetley began to get back on his feet, both physically and figuratively. He got back into the ice cream truck towards the end of 2010. But as well as trying to make a living, Keetley was also making the rounds looking for information. But the shadow of what had happened was hanging over him. And with him asking potentially inflammatory questions, he worried that he may once again pass through the crosshairs of the men that had attacked him before. With this in mind, Keetley decided that he needed an insurance policy. And for Keetley, this came in the form of a bodyguard of sorts. After becoming friendly with a man living in his parents' neighbourhood, Keetley began to talk to David Beckwith about his situation. Beckwith was sympathetic, and when Keetley asked him to help out with the ice cream business, Beckwith agreed. Keetley would drive and Beckwith would man the window and take the money, and they would split the profits 50-50. But in a major difference to how the business operated before the attack on Keetley, the van now housed 3 separate handguns, including a .45 caliber Glock holstered near the serving window. Irrespective whether it was driven by anxiety or paranoia, or perhaps both, it was clear that Keetley's actions were starting to escalate to concerning levels, to the point that his relationship with Beckwith came to an abrupt end. But I will let Beckwith himself explain how this happened when I show you some of his witness testimony later in the video. But Keetley was desperate to get information, and as far as he was concerned, he was making progress. After a short time of making his informal inquiries, one street name kept on coming up. That name was Creeper. As time went on, Keetley would tell a great many people of his desire for revenge, and his search for Creeper became more erratic, with his anger escalating the closer he seemed to get to this elusive character. It was clear that Keetley's quest was becoming more dangerous and all-consuming. This leads us to the events of November the 25th, 2010. The question of whether or not it was Michael Keetley that took part in these events was the crux of the court proceedings that would follow. So I will just describe the facts of what happened, describe the court proceedings, and leave you decide if he was the perpetrator. On the evening of November the 25th, 2010, several men are gathered on the porch of 210 Ocean Mist Court in Ruskin. They are passing time chatting, drinking together, maybe smoking a little bit of weed, and generally just enjoying each other's company and minding their own business. During the course of the evening, a man wearing a shirt emblazoned with the word sheriff approaches the group and asks them all to line up. The man asks the confused friends about someone called Creeper before he then shoots all 6 of the lined up men with a .45 caliber handgun. He then leaves the scene. 4 of the 6 men survive their gunshots, but brothers 28-year-old Juan Guitron and 22-year-old Sergio Guitron succumbed to their injuries and died. The investigation that followed was, in a word, messy, with witnesses misidentifying suspects from lineups, along with other confusions. But just a week after the shootings, Michael Keetley is arrested. The decade that follows is beset by legal wranglings, including around the death penalty, along with the unfortunate protracted illness and death of defense attorney Paul Carr, until the case finally came to trial in 2020. Now, irrespective of guilt or innocence, I have some sympathy for Michael Keetley here, since he has been in jail for almost 10 years without a conviction. Such are the sometimes glacially slow-moving wheels of justice. The case was based on witnesses identifying Keetley, the link between Keetley and the creeper character that he was so obsessed with, along with his apparent obsession with revenge and the fact that Keetley was known to have a .45 caliber handgun. The defense case hinged on the messiness of the investigation and perhaps the key fact that Keetley's prior attack had left him with a disability that left him incapable of firing a gun. And it was a lack of conclusive evidence one way or the other that led to a hung jury at the end of the first trial in 2020, with the judge declaring a mistrial and ordering a retrial. And it is the retrial that occurred last year. Both sides of the case made their positions clear in their opening statements.
May it please the court, co-counsels, defense counsels, Mr. Keetley. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Obsessing about revenge, that's what this case is about. Obsession with getting revenge is what was on the defendant's mind the early morning hours of November 25th of 2010. The only thing on his mind those early morning hours of that Thanksgiving morning in 2010, when he shot and killed two innocent victims, two brothers, Juan and Sergio Guitron, and tried to kill four other victims who fortunately survived the horrifying events of those early morning hours. Those four victims being Richard Cantu, Ramon Galan, Gonzalo Guevara, and Mr. Daniel Beltran. In order for you to understand how we got to the obsession with revenge on November 25th of 2010, we need to go back to January of 2010. Almost to the day 11 months prior to the horrifying incidents of that Thanksgiving morning, where in January of 2010, when the defendant, Michael Keetley, was working as an ice cream truck driver in the Ruskin area, and he was robbed by a black female and two black males. The black female had approached his ice cream truck and had attempted to make a purchase when two black males came up, robbed him of $12 and shot him. Mr. Keetley sustained injuries, and he contacted law enforcement, where the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office began their investigation as to that robbery of Mr. Keetley. They obtained a description for Mr. Keetley, that being of a black female and 2 black masked males, and a description of the suspect's vehicle. Law enforcement, as they do in all of these kinds of cases, began their investigation, working on leads that they were able to have, working off of the information that Mr. Keetley provided to them. And unfortunately, they were not able to make any arrests in that robbery investigation. They were not able to identify any suspects. And Mr. Keetley was upset about that. He was upset that he had been injured and that no one was going to pay for that. He was upset that law enforcement was not able to complete and close out that investigation with an arrest. So he decided he was going to do his own investigation. He was going to go out and speak to witnesses. He was going to try to obtain evidence. And as this case will unfold over these next several weeks, you will learn from numerous witnesses about what he did in his investigation. He spoke to people in the neighborhood. He conducted research, website research on his laptop. He obtained firearms. And as his investigation unfolded, word on the street was that Hispanic individuals, Hispanic males, were in fact responsible for the robbery. Not the individuals, not of the individuals of the race that he ultimately had identified or had provided to law enforcement. And that he had uncovered these Hispanic males were the ones who ultimately had caused him harm and had robbed him. And as he is uncovering this information, as the word on the street provided him, that a person by the name, a Hispanic male by the name of Creeper, nicknamed Creeper.
We would have a response. And here it comes. But first, let me tell you what we agree with. We agree with the government when they say that on November 25 of 2010, a terrible crime occurred here in Hillsborough County. And we agree with the government when they tell you that Juan and Sergio Detron died and that 4 others were shot. And we agree with the government when they come and tell you that it was wrong and it was criminal. But they say Michael Keetley did it. They say Michael Keetley is responsible. They have picked up the heavy hand of blame and pointed it at Michael Keetley. Folks, that is where our agreement ends. Michael Keetley is not guilty because he did not do it. Now, you just heard from Miss Johnson for some time, and she told you some facts, and this is my chance to tell you what we believe the facts will be, okay? And we take issue with some of the things that they mentioned in their opening statement. And we take issue that there are some things that they did not tell you in this opening statement. And for that, I'm grateful for a response. We went last week a long time in jury selection, and when we did, we talked to you about this idea of presumed innocent. That when you sit here, you are presumed innocent. But at some point it was suggested unless the government proves its case beyond to the exclusion of each and every reasonable doubt. Remember how we talked about the father who presumes that his son or his daughter did something without seeing? And that we said we don't want to presume guilt in any situation. It's not fair to start here at this table. Remember how we said as a father or a parent that maybe we'll stand here in the middle.
I'm going to object this to argument. These are opening statements.
I'm going to caution Mr. Grant not to argue the case. Save it for closing. Let's talk about what you believe the facts will be in the case.
As you hear the evidence, you don't stand in the middle. As you hear the evidence, you are to presume that he is innocent. And Michael Keetley is here today to let each and every one of you know that he is not guilty of what these prosecutors say he is. So let's get to work. When we talk about this case, the government will have to prove their case beyond and to the exclusion of each and every reasonable doubt. Talk about, he goes there without, he's taken to the station, they put him in a room, they talk to him about the case, and they say things like, hey, judge me for me. We're not going to BS you. They talk with him a little bit. The first statement ends at the station, and he goes and sits outside for 45 minutes. No car, no phone. Records which put you at the scene of the crime. That is not only not true. Michael Keetley says, terrific. If you've got my cell phone records, you can know where I am. Do it! They never will. They never do. They have the ability, and they do not do it. That is what the evidence will be.
As before, little in the case was clear-cut, save perhaps from Keetley's obsession with Creeper, and not all of the witnesses were happy to be questioned, especially Michael Keetley's erstwhile friend David Beckwith, who was, it's safe to say, somewhat combative.
Did the name Creeper ever come up when you were working on the ice cream truck with the defendant?
Yep.
Tell me about it.
That would have been out by Waimama, by the rec center.
Do you know who brought it up?
Do I know the people? No.
Not that you know Creeper, but do you know who the person was that brought that name up?
No, I just know them from being gangbangers up there in Waimama.
Okay. So when we're talking about the name Creeper, who's standing there when that name's brought up?
What do you mean, who's standing there?
Was the defendant there
Yes,
when
the
Creeper's
defendant was
brought
there.
up?
Yes.
What's said by the defendant?
I don't recall.
All right. Do you recall the name Creeper being brought up?
Yes.
Do you recall the area of town where the name Creeper was brought up?
Yes, I do.
So tell me the area.
The area is Waimama. If you've ever been out there, there's a rec center if you go down one of the main roads, goes way back. We used to call it the drug alley because that's what it was. It was
Okay.
a drug alley.
Not in your mind a great neighborhood.
No.
Now.
We never went to any great neighborhoods.
After the name Creeper is brought up, do you hear that name again?
I hear from Mike more than anything else.
Okay, that's what I want to know about. Tell me why and when you hear the defendant say the name Creeper.
Why? Because he believes that he's the guy that shot him.
So what made you believe that?
Mike wouldn't shut up about him.
What's he saying?
He's saying, I think that's one of the guys that shot me.
All right. Do you hear anything more about the name Creeper? Answer out loud for me.
No.
All right. Do you specifically recall an interaction?
Yes.
Tell me about
That's
that.
the one that sticks out in my head the most because he really upset that little girl.
So tell me about
I thought
that.
that was wrong. We were down in Ruskin at these, I don't know how to explain them, subsidized apartments.
Okay.
There's a little girl that watches a lot of kids in the neighborhood, I guess, while they're in the pool area by the apartments.
Had you seen her before?
once or twice before this.
Okay.
I didn't see her after this, after the incident happened. Mike asked her if she had a sister, an older sister, and she said yes. And he wanted to see a picture of her, and she didn't know if she had a picture. And then he starts getting irritated when she didn't show it right away, and she kept asking why he wanted to see a picture.
Let me stop you and let me ask you another question. Did he tell this girl why he wanted to see a picture of her?
Yes, he did.
What did he say?
He said that he thinks that her sister was involved in shooting him.
Did that girl ever show the defendant a picture?
Reluctantly, yes.
And did the defendant say anything that you heard after he saw that picture?
That's not her.
Okay.
He got that little girl upset for no reason, and it was bad. It was wrong.
Were there other times that you heard the defendant asking questions of people who would come up to the ice cream truck?
Yes.
Were those questions focused around who would have shot and who would have robbed him?
Yes.
Did
There
the name
there was one other incident that happened in out by Ocean Mist where this guy, I guess that they knew. He said that he was saying that I think your son was involved in shooting me, and he got upset about it. And when he asked,
Well, hold on, let me stop you a second. Don't tell me what anyone else said to the defendant, only tell me what the defendant said. So this interaction that occurred over by Ocean Mist, did you know who the man was that the defendant was speaking to?
I've seen him around before, yeah.
Okay. Did you know he had a son?
No.
Okay. Did you hear any comments or statements from the defendant regarding who may have shot him to the man that he's speaking to?
I don't understand what you're asking.
That's fine. So when you hear the defendant asking questions over by Ocean Mist, was it in regards to the individual he's talking to, his son, being involved?
Yes.
Okay. Was there a back and forth exchange between them?
Yes.
Did it get heated?
Somewhat heated.
Okay. Ultimately, did the defendant ask questions about the son being involved?
Yes, he asked the son actually, and the son replied and said, "If it was me that would have shot you, you wouldn't be standing here right now."
Okay. Was this an exchange that you heard?
Yes.
Okay. I want to take a step back and talk about
I saw the whole thing. It wasn't something I just heard. I witnessed it.
That's what I meant. You heard between you and Michael Keetley on the ice cream truck.
Yeah.
Is that kind of
little by little every day he would show his true colors and.
Well, I mean, I don't want to talk about leading up to it. Did you pull a gun on him?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so we can get to things end poorly because you pulled a gun on him. Tell me about that.
Well, I kind of felt like, he's already been shot up once, and we were in a situation where it was a place where we could get picked off. And we're not going into nice neighborhoods.
I'm going to stop you for a second. Do you remember the name of the road that you were on? Stevens Road?
Stevens.
Okay. Stevens kind of a one-way in, one-way out?
Yeah.
Were you comfortable in that neighborhood?
No.
Did you tell that to the
Yes, I
defendant?
did. He thought it was funny.
How'd that make you feel?
Very irate.
All right. Was there further discussions between you and the defendant about how you felt going down Stevens Road?
There wasn't discussions more than berating, name callings, and making me feel little.
All right. Didn't take kindly to that?
No, I did not.
What'd you do?
I told him to let me out, drop me off the truck. Stop the truck right now.
Did he?
No.
What'd you do?
Well, I put the gun to his head,
Where?
to his temple.
All right. What was the defendant doing at this point? Was he driving the truck?
Yes.
Okay. Does he stop?
Yes.
What do you do?
I get out of the truck.
What do you do with the gun?
He made a comment about him. I've got to take his gun too, and I took and chambered it, and I threw the clip at him, and then I threw the gun at him.
Which gun did you use?
The 45.
When you got off that ice cream truck, did you have that .45 caliber firearm with you?
No.
Where was it?
Thrown at him inside the truck.
Does it sound kind
Can you describe the difficulties that he was having?
I mean, when you get in an accident What kind of, I don't understand what you're wanting me to describe.
Just tell me what you saw of the problems that he was having getting up and down. I mean, if you were with him, right?
I didn't see him have problems getting up and down. I saw him having problems moving his arm, but it wasn't that bad.
Well,
Didn't stop him from being able to shoot a pistol.
Informed him that he was, as you call it, gimped up.
Yep.
What? Tell the jury what gimped up means.
It means that he didn't move normal.
Can you give him any better description than that?
No, I can't.
You can't. Your testimony is that he was riddled with shots, right? Like bullet shots. That's your statement. That he was riddled with shots.
Yeah, you should have seen the van. It was all bloody still when I saw it.
And by your own words, he was, I'm not going to use the ugly word, effed up. Those were your words.
Sure.
Michael Keetley, in
Okay.
your words, was effed up. Right?
Yeah. I'm effed up. Can you tell?
We'll let the jury decide that. And so the way that it was going to work is that you were going to take the money, you were going to exchange the product, and Michael Keetley was going to drive the ice cream van, right?
That's exactly what happened.
But those were the terms, okay? He's going to sit and drive because he knows the route. You're going to do the rest. Right?
Yes.
In fact, Michael Keetley would rarely leave the driver's seat. Rarely during the time that you were working with him.
Sounds fairly accurate. Yep.
And the financial arrangements, as you said in direct examination, they were pretty generous, right?
Yeah, I felt they were generous.
And the reason that they were generous is that Michael Keetley could not run that truck without you. That's the reason he gave you 50-50, right?
I don't know.
Well, you were surprised that he was giving you 50-50, right?
Yes.
And the reason that he was giving you 50-50 is that he could not operate that business.
That's not why I was
Without you.
surprised.
Don't talk over each other. Wait till he finishes the question.
Is that correct? Couldn't operate
No,
without
that's not
you.
why I was surprised. I was surprised because he's a chintz.
Oh, okay. That's why you were surprised. Now, you realize, as a convicted felon 3 times, you cannot possess a firearm. That's like a no-brainer, right?
Yep.
Okay. And so part of your duties with Mr. Keetley in this ice cream truck, part of your duties is that you were going to possess a .45 caliber semi-automatic weapon. That's what you were going to do.
His.
Did you listen to my question? You were going to possess a .45 caliber.
His.
Did I ask you whose it was right now? That wasn't the question. My question to you is, you were going to possess that as part of your duties on that truck.
Yes.
You hadn't told him that you were a 3-time convicted felon, right?
Oh, he already knew that.
Well, how did he know? You didn't
Because
tell him.
yes, I did. Oh, yes, I did.
Tell
He
me
knew
what-
it. He
tell
knew it
me what
before I
date.
ever got on that van that I was a convicted
Tell
felon.
me what date you told him.
The day I started working with him.
Oh, so was that part of an application process?
Okay, sure. If you want to be a smartass to me, I mean, I'll be a smartass back.
Wait, I'm not going to allow that, all right? Just answer the questions.
After a case that ran through most of March of 2023, both sides made their closing statements before the case was left in the hands of the jury.
Led him to start his own investigation. His investigation I suggest you, which occurred over several months, became an obsession, where he's asking people back on the street for information. He's asking Norman Jean Towers to assist him when they drive around South County in Hispanic neighborhoods, where he's wearing a hat and ducking down and calling out license plates, where he's doing internet searches, accessing inmate records, accessing Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. Because his prayers for justice turned into an understanding and a search for vigilante justice, where he chose to take it on into his own hands. Into his own hands with a semi-automatic pistol. And 313 days later, after he was shot, he showed up at the residence of the Lucas family at 604 Ocean Mist Court, armed with a firearm, demanding to know who or where Creeper is, demanding them to produce identification, and then shooting 6 of the men, causing the deaths of Sergio Guitron, Juan Guitron, causing the permanent disability of Richard Cantu, injuries to Daniel Beltran, Ramon J. Galan, and Gonzalo Guevara.
Your Honor, Mr. Keetley is going to waive closing argument. He's going to rely upon the evidence as presented to the court. He's had extensive conversations with Mr. Gonzalez, with me. He knows that I am completely prepared to do this closing argument, and he has instructed me not to.
All right. Mr. Keetley, I have to first discuss that decision with you, make sure that that is your decision and no one has forced you or threatened you in any way to make that decision. So that's my first question. You just heard what Ms. Gowdy has informed the court, that she, although she is prepared, ready, willing, and able to present a closing argument on your behalf, that she does not intend to do so because you have instructed her not to. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Has anyone... That is your decision.
That is my decision. Yes, sir.
No.
The jury were then required to consider their verdict. And the jury would deliberate for around 13 hours before returning their verdicts.
State of Florida versus Michael Edward Keetley, case number 10 CF 18429. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 1, victims Victor Sergio Guitron. The defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree as charged. And 1, did the defendant personally carry, display, use, threaten, or attempt to use a firearm? Yes. Number 2, did the defendant actually possess a firearm? Yes. Number 3, did the defendant discharge the firearm? Yes. Number 4, did the discharge of the firearm cause the death of Sergio Guitron? Yes. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 2, victim Juan Guitron. A, the defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree as charged. And 1, did the defendant personally carry, display, use, threaten, or attempt to use a firearm? Yes. Number 2, did the defendant actually possess a firearm? Yes. Number 3, did the defendant discharge the firearm? Yes. Number 4, did the discharge of the firearm cause the death of Juan Guitron? Yes.
And after the guilty verdict delivered in March of 2023, the sentencing took place in May of 2023. And the victim impact statements were extremely powerful.
Around that microphone, make sure that the green light is on the microphone. All right, let me start with Madam Interpreter to swear you in to translate. Do you swear to accurately translate from Spanish to English and English to Spanish in the proceedings this morning?
Yes, Lisette Corsa, State Certified Spanish Interpreter.
Ms. Corses, thank you. Now I'm going to swear the witness in. Ma'am, if you'll raise your right hand, please.
Señora, le pido que alce la mano derecha, por favor.
And if you'll state your name for the record.
Diga su nombre para el acta.
Paz Quesada.
Paz Quesada.
Ma'am, do you swear or affirm that any testimony you offer will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. You may put your hand down. I understand you'd like to make a statement today, ma'am.
Yes.
All right. You may proceed, and remember that she is interpreting for you, so give her an opportunity to translate. So break it up so that she can translate.
Okay.
You may proceed.
Bueno, mi pregunta para él, lo que siempre he querido preguntarle.
Well, my question to him is one that I've always wanted to ask him.
¿Por qué mató a mis hijos?
Why did you kill my sons?
Y quiero preguntarle cómo se siente, si siente su conciencia tranquila o qué es lo que él siente si no se arrepiente.
And I wanted to ask what he feels, if his conscience is clear, or what does he feel if he's not sorry for what he did, remorseful for what he did.
Me quitó la mitad de mi vida.
You took half of my life away.
Me destrozó mi corazón sin mis hijos.
You tore my heart without my children. You destroyed my heart without my children.
Mis hijos es lo único que yo tenía, los amaba y los amo con todo mi corazón.
My children were the only people that I had. I loved them with all of my heart.
Y quiero saber cómo él se siente.
And I want to
vermelos
know.
Quitado,
I want to know how you feel now that you've taken them away from me.
sabiendo que eran unos muchachos inocentes y no le hacían daño a nadie menos a él.
Knowing that they were innocent young men that had never caused harm to anyone, and less to you.
Lo siento por culpa de él, no pude ser abuela, no pude tener, ellos no pudieron seguir su vida, hacer su vida.
Because of you, I cannot be a grandmother. Because of you, they couldn't continue with their lives.
Ellos tenían mucho futuro por delante.
They had they had a big future ahead of them.
¿Cómo se siente con el daño que me hizo a mí y a todas las familias?
How do you
de las
feel
víctimas?
with all the hurt that you've caused me and all of the victims' families?
All right, Mr. Canto, if you'll come up to that microphone and raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm any testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, sir. You can put your hand down.
Just want to know, how could someone do such a heinous crime to 6 innocent men? You know, it's hard to go through this 12 years to finally get justice for our family. It's you know, the physical damages are always going to be there. With my own brother, Richard Cantu, he has physical damage. I see it every day. It's hard to see that, you know. The emotional damages always going to be there. You know, with 12 years, we've been waiting for this to come to where we're at now, and it's, you know, from my aunt Boss, you know, her 2 kids were taken away from her at such a young age, I went to school with them, and I absolutely love my cousins. To see this happen to that, it's unbearable, and I don't, it's even for my love families, the Ramon Galan, like the time that it happened, it was like unthinkable.
Well, that's all the damages and all the stuff that barely I just heard with it. All that is true, and all the damages that it did to me, to all my friends, especially to the mother of that Surgeon Juan. Like, I want to tell him though that I forgive you what you did, because I know it's not you, it's the devil in you. And you should let go of that. You should ask God to forgive you. Because you ain't escaping none of his wrath. Not even the human wrath that you just heard. I would just like to tell you to ask God to forgive you. Maybe you can find forgiveness and then live a better life as to eternal life. So other than that, you're going straight to hell.
Go ahead, Mr. Keetley. Let me have you stand to receive. I know that it's not a surprise that you're going to be sentenced to life today, but I do want to make a couple of comments. This has been a very long road and a very difficult case for a number of reasons, including the fact that it has been such a long road. I think that it is the oldest case that is on the docket in this circuit, but it has finally come to an end, and what it shows to the victims in this case is that justice is not always swift, but justice is eventually served. Nothing I can do or say today will alleviate the pain that you have suffered and the losses that you have suffered, but I do hope that you can find some peace in the conclusion, or at least the conclusion at this stage of this case after such a long road. I am going to adjudicate, if I haven't previously done so. I probably did adjudicate at the end of the trial. Madam Clerk, was he previously adjudicated?
No, he wasn't.
All right. Well, I will adjudicate Mr. Keetley at this time guilty on all 6 counts. I will sentence him to life in prison on each and every one of the 6 counts, with a minimum mandatory of 25 years in each and every one of the counts. In Florida, life means life because there is no possibility of parole. So, Mr. Keetley, you will, barring any reversal on appeal, spend the rest of your natural life in the Florida Department of Corrections.
Keetley was sentenced to life with no chance of parole. But with the outcome being so recent, it seems inevitable that there will be a whole bunch of appeals to follow. But I will update any new information as and when it happens. But that brings us up to date with the case of the revenge-obsessed ice cream man. So what do you think? I would love to know your thoughts on this case. Oh, and for anyone wondering, Creeper was revealed to be the street name of a Ruskin man called Omar Balon. Balon, authorities revealed, had absolutely no connection to the lethal attack on Michael Keetley. Make of that what you will. Whatever the truth around the events of the 25th of November 2010, it left 4 people injured and 2 people dead. The fact that those 2 people were brothers only magnified the grief and sense of loss for the family of these 2 young men who were so senselessly murdered. This video is of course dedicated to Juan and Sergio Guitron and their friends and family who were hit with a double whammy of loss. I send them love and my deepest condolences. Thank you for watching another episode of Murder of Crows. I'm Steve. This is my Lord and Master Samson. And we will see you when we see you.